from the brink. Mayor, how are you, sir? Mayor, I first of all, set the scene. Where were you when you found out about the planes hitting into the World Trade Center?
I was at a restaurant on 55th Street and 5th Avenue in the Peninsula Hotel. I was having breakfast with my chief counsel, Dennison Young, and with Bill Simon, who was then considering running for governor of California in a situation very similar to what we have right now. And it was a day off, kind of. It was primary day. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party were having contested primaries for who would succeed me because I was term limited. So I thought I could take the morning a little lighter. I usually had an 8 o'clock meeting. I moved it to 4. And I moved it to 4 because I figured that's when they would start complaining about cheating, which, of course, the New York Times says never happens, but happened in every election in New York. So I figured around that time we'd have to start doing our investigating. So I gave my staff until later in the day to come in that day. And then I was going to have a meeting with the widows of Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese, and a whole group of other people. We were funding a statue of Pee Wee Reese putting his arm around Jackie Robinson in that famous situation where he kind of accepted him, guy from the South accepts the first black ball player. We were going to put that at the Mets' new minor league stadium in Coney Island. So I had no idea what was going to happen. And a police officer, Patty Verone, who was taking care of me, taking care of my security detective, walked in and told Dennison Young, who told me that a twin-engine plane had hit the North Tower, that there was a terrible fire down there, and that we had to get there right away. So we quickly got up, said goodbye to Bill. Bill Bill hugged me and told me, "God bless you," which he's kind of a religious guy, but there was something a little ominous about it. I mean, to me, this was just another emergency so far. So we walked outside, we looked up in the sky, and Denny and I both concluded, beautiful day, this can't be an accident. So now what do we have? Terrorist or insane person attacking one of the buildings? And I thought we should assume terrorist. Always assume the worst. You can always dial back from it. I was able to get the police commissioner on the phone as we were racing down there. And we started to take our preliminary steps for our terrorism plan, which we had developed years before and kept changing every year. And the first thing we did was close down the bridges and tunnels so that no more terrorists would come in, because we didn't know if this was one plane. Was there going to be another? Was it part of a signal for many attacks?
So wait. So you immediately, before the second plane even hit, you were closing down the tunnels and you were already acting, because the media at first said it was just like a twin-engine Cessna, and it clearly was not.
Yeah, and that's what I thought.
Right.
That's what I thought. But we would never have announced this because, what you should do with an emergency is you should assume the worst, begin that way, and then you can scale back. So Bernie and I, the police commissioner, decided we would begin with our terrorism plan and then see what happened. At that point, I was still 50-50 on and hoping it wasn't a terrorist attack. But as I kept looking at the building, as we're getting closer and closer and closer, and I'm looking at the building, Denny and I are both questioning, can this be a twin-engine plane? Look at the fire. The fire was massive. And then all of a sudden, we're about a mile away, and a big explosion occurs. Don't know what it is. Police commissioner calls me immediately and says, a second plane hit, boss. This is an attack. We're under attack. And I said, I'm trying to get through to the White House. He said, I think some of the guys have, meaning from our police department, I think we have air cover. I said, I know, but I want to get the president. So get hard lines, put in hard lines right near there. What I meant by that was the cell phones weren't working 100%, about 50. And I wanted good old fashioned connected telephones like we used to have in the old days. And he said, don't worry, boss, we're working on it. You got to understand, with my police department, it was very rare that I gave them an order they didn't anticipate. They're the greatest police department in the world. And they've been through everything imaginable except this. And when I got there, I got out of the car, and my first deputy mayor or deputy mayor for operations, Joe Loda, ran up to me and said, "Mayor, this is terrible. This is hell. People are jumping out of those buildings." And I looked up. I didn't see anybody jumping out. So I hoped that he was exaggerating or overwrought. And then I walked the 2 blocks to right under the North Tower to meet with the fire chief who was running the emergency effort. And on the way there, while looking up and watching debris come down and hitting people, I saw a man on the 101st, 102nd floor. I saw him for a few seconds before he jumped. Obviously, indecision. Do I burn or do I jump? And he threw himself out. When that happened, I went into a different state of mind. I grabbed the police commissioner's arm and I said, "Bernie, this is way beyond all of our plans." We had like 27 emergency plans. This is something we're going to have to use our instincts. We're going to have to invent our response. We're going to have to move quick. And then we got to say a little prayer because only God can make this right. And he said, "You're right, boss." And then we immediately started going through a checklist of securing. So you have that 2 attacks now. I'm starting to get rumors that there are 8 planes, 9 planes, 10 planes. I'm starting to get rumors that there are going to be ground attacks. So we dispersed the police to the locations in the city that were on the priority list of targets for Islamic terrorists. That list was about 15 years old, and I was familiar with it from the time I was a prosecutor. Rudy, and I knew we had it.
Rudy,
so,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I was thinking today, as I was looking at the state of New York today, which is horrendous, and dying. A lot of people say we'll never come back. And I remember, because I worked in the Time Warner building, which was still under construction when this happened, and I remember what you did. You went and you marshaled the troops and said, "You're going to finish that building. Now, what is it going to take to finish that building?" And you marshaled all of the entrepreneurs and even the unions, everybody, to get things done in New York. Is de Blasio or is New York even in a place to handle a terrorist attack? And which is it? Was it worse then or is it worse now without an attack?
Wow. Well, first of all, I think the pandemic tells you that with the horrible way in which both de Blasio and Cuomo handled it, that they're not ready for. I mean, this was the pandemic, stretched out over a longer period of time, but really should have been pretty simple to handle if the governor and the mayor worked together.
Right.
Here's one of the big differences. As soon as I got out of the building we were trapped in, I called the governor. And the governor said, "Thank God, we thought you were missing." And he said, "I've brought in the National Guard, but I'm not going to deploy them I wasn't going to deploy them until I could get you." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you did because we need all the help we can get." And then George Pataki and I decided we would meet together. We would set up a joint command post, and we would govern New York City and state together for the next 3 or 4 months. Every day we had 2 to 3 meetings a day.
I remember it.
My staff, his staff. That afternoon, President Bush gave us FEMA to work with us, not over us, but with us. And by that evening, we had a team. And both George and I did that because we knew that even when you had a good relationship, which I did with him, your staff is going to start bickering over small things. And if I make a mistake, they'll criticize me if he makes a mistake. So we had enough experience in government to know if we stick together, then our staffs will stick together. I think that was the single best decision we made.
All right.
And it's the thing that wasn't going on during the pandemic because de Blasio and Cuomo hate each other. Right. They don't talk to each other.
More with Rudy Giuliani later. We'll tell you more about that here in a second. It's been 20 years since we went to war in Afghanistan because the Taliban was harboring terrorists and those terrorists brought it to our shore. But now the war is over. And I'm starting to think our State Department trusts the Taliban more than they trust American citizens like you and me. But maybe the Taliban's changed, right? Don't buy it. Our government is the one that has changed. And we go there next.